During the closing months of World War II, the tension between the two allies, the Soviet Union and the United States of America, reached a new level, as the Soviet Union began to enlarge its sphere of influence through the seizure and eventual consolidation of power in nations of Eastern Europe. The creation of Soviet satellite states presented the United States, who believed in self-determination, with the question, who or what is the real rival? This tension would eventually evolve into the Cold War. Through the assessment of Soviet seizure and the consolidation of power in Poland, the nation which World War II seemingly revolved around, it is evident that Polish independence remained a feature of international conflict until the end of the Cold War. The Soviet Union established communist regimes in Eastern and Central Europe during the final months of World War II and into the late 1940s. Throughout the next 40 years, these satellite states were known as the Eastern Bloc. One of the first satellite states was Poland. During World War II, Poland consisted of two governments. The first was the London Poles, a government in exile. The second was the Polish Communist Party, whose leader Stalin had first purged and then replaced with his own choosing. Meanwhile, Stalin also developed a Polish communist leadership in Moscow in order for him to directly interfere in Polish affairs if he needed to. The Soviets believed Polish control was essential because it would act as a boundary from German aggression. Stalin used Gomulka and Beirut, Polish communists supported by the Soviet Union, to negotiate with the government in exile as well as the socialists. While Gomulka was interested in uniting with these governments and to create a popular front, Beirut opposed any negotiations with the socialists. In 1944, Beirut was appointed by Stalin as president of the Polish Committee for National Liberation, a group consisting of communists from the Moscow government. In 1945, when Poland was liberated from the Nazis by the Soviets, Stalin established this committee as the provisional government, despite little Polish support for communism. In the months that followed, thousands of anti-communists were killed. Gomulka, the Polish Communist Party leader under Soviet control, was replaced in 1948 for his nationalist deviation by Beirut. Gomulka had resisted joining Cominform, an organization of communist states established by the Soviet Union, and through intimidation and rigged voting, Beirut was elected into power that same year. Stalin succeeded in solidifying the Soviet control through the creation of a single-party state, the Polish United Workers' Party, which consisted of the socialist and communist parties. The party was modeled after the communist regime in the Soviet Union and was based off the ideological beliefs of Lenin and Marx. This communist party would hold total power until 1989. Although the Polish United Workers' Party held power for about 4 decades, the unity of the government did not last long, as the communists and socialists quickly chafed over the issue of radical social and economic reforms. Beirut followed the Moscow line of government, allowing Soviet officials to be a part of the Polish armed forces. In fact, a Soviet was even the Minister of Defense. This created tension within the state, as the Polish Socialist Party was more interested in the nationalistic Poland. Osobka Morawski, chairman of the Polish Socialist Party, tried to confirm the Polish Socialist Party's commitment to Polish nationalism by declaring that patriotism should be the most noble feature of Polish socialism. The communists continued to put the Polish Socialist Party under the extreme pressure through their increased belligerence. For instance, the communists attacked the Polish Socialist Party for its apparent support of right-wing groups and the creation of the Cominform in September 1947. The onset of the Cold War had a profound effect on the Polish left-wing parties, accentuating Poland's territorial insecurity and dependence on the Soviet Union. Therefore, the nature of the Polish United Workers' Party proved to be weak, as the Polish state was ruled by chaos of opposition within itself. The tension within the party indicated a need for internal vigilance, which was never established. This put Gomulka in a weakened position even before the increase of food prices, which led to rioting and his replacement by Gierek. Gierek promised prosperity, but was never able to deliver. In 1980, price increases caused civil disturbances and thus his resignation. Opposition to the Soviet consolidation of power came as early as 1956 when Beirut's successor faced increasingly angry Poles. Furthermore, Soviet control over Poland was threatened when Khrushchev, Stalin's successor, attacked Stalin's memory, thus spawning the movement of de-Stalinization. Also, in October 1956, Beirut's successor Akhab faced riots as Poles grew upset with workers' rights. Through popular demand, Gomulka returned to power and was appointed to first secretary. Although Khrushchev threatened to interfere, the Soviets did not, despite their dislike of Gomulka for fear of massive retaliation from the Polish workers. Gomulka proceeded in sending thousands of Soviet officers back to Moscow and winning an assurance from the Soviet Union that they would respect Polish sovereignty. In 1971, when there was a 30% increase in food prices which caused more strikes and demonstrations, Gomulka was replaced by Gierek. Soviet leadership became more lenient under Gierek's rule, as Brezhnev, Khrushchev's successor, allowed Gierek to use Western loans to facilitate and re-energize Polish industrialization. Also, under Gierek, in June of 1976, an organized opposition, students, workers, and intellectuals, formed the Committee for Defense of Workers, began to emerge after food prices rocketed another 60%. Eventually, Gierek was forced to offer reforms and negotiated with Solidarity, the first self-governing trade union in the communist world. Solidarity was abolished in 1982, though millions of members continued to work underground. The Communist Party, however, was dwindling. In 1986, Gorbachev, Brezhnev's successor, announced that he would no longer wanted to interfere with the Eastern Bloc. Therefore, the Soviet communist rule in the state of Poland began to descend into its eventual breakdown in 1991. By 1989, the Communist Party and Solidarity had come to the agreement of Contract Sejm, which allowed for partially free elections in Poland. Solidarity won most of the parliamentary and Senate seats offered. However, Jaruzelski, the chairman of the Polish United Workers' Party, was slimly elected as executive president. Yet in August of that same year, he accepted defeat to Mazowiecki, the Solidarity leader. This was the first government in the Eastern Bloc not run by communism. Less than 2 years later, the Soviet Union collapsed, thus marking the end of the Cold War. From the outburst of World War II, Polish independence was used as a tool for other nations to declare war against one another. The invasion and seizure of Poland in 1939 began World War II and crystallized the ideological differences that caused the Cold War.